Hello, everyone. Welcome to Primetime in the library, where we get to share with each other what we're learning and experiencing at Bethel and beyond. Before we get to today's presentation, I want to tell you about our last Primetime of the year, which will be next week on Thursday. And that is a presentation by Edie Shapolsky and Amy Dykstra. And they are going to be talking about their interdisciplinary collaboration to engage students in community-based learning and environmental justice, a case study in an urban setting. Today, Dr. Katie Bonawitz will share personal stories and professional experiences from her sabbatical in Ukraine last fall, along with past, present, and future needs in the area of special education and inclusion in Ukraine. Katie wears many hats at Bethel, being the program director and professor in Bethel's Masters of Special Education program, as well as the assistant dean of the Center for Access and Integration. She was awarded a Fulbright teaching grant in Russia and has traveled and studied abroad throughout her adult life. She's also published extensively in the areas of special education and professional development for educators. A few fascinating facts about Katie. Katie caught the traveling bug while living in Germany as an exchange student at 18. She lived in Northern England as a university student, during which she lived in one of the castles featured in the Harry Potter movies. I don't know about you, but I'm green with envy. Her British experiences continued with multiple homestays with Bethel education students southwest of London. She spent one sabbatical in Finland and her most recent, which you'll hear about today, in Ukraine. Katie is a devoted auntie to, get this, 47 nieces and nephews. You have a prolific family. 2 nieces are currently attending Bethel. When she's not traveling, teaching, and nurturing nephews and nieces, she loves to experience nature while biking and walking with her husband, playing piano and singing traditional hymns, and cooking new recipes. Please join me in welcoming Katie.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here, and for all of you who may be joining later or via Zoom, welcome to you as well, and a special welcome to friends in Ukraine. So today I'll be sharing on my sabbatical experience in Ukraine. That was in the fall of 2021. And I'll usually be saying we, because I was blessed to have my husband Luke be with me the entire time. And he was my co-partner, co-traveler, co-teacher all along the way. So first I want to give a little bit of context of why we ended up in Ukraine, and it was all God. So we like to use these verses that Shepherd's Foundation uses from Ephesians 3:20 and 21. Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be glory. We were intending to go to Camp Maximum on our way to Siberia, which is where I was supposed to be completing a Fulbright teaching scholarship in fall of 20. So we had this plan that we would go and help at this family camp for kids with disabilities. So we were connected with Vitaly Sobko, the CEO, and we were excited to do that. Well, on July 9th of 2021, 2 weeks before my sabbatical was to begin, I learned that my Fulbright scholarship had again been deferred, and this time they had no idea for how long or if I would ever get to do it. And it had already been deferred twice because of COVID, and the time in July was because of government unrest, in-country terrorism, and a multitude of other things of which we can now see the after effects of all of that. So we had a meeting planned with Vitaly, the CEO of Camp Maximum, on July 13th, and I said to him, I now have 5 empty months on my calendar. Can you help me out? And he did, and we learned that Ukraine had a 90-day window that we could go without a visa. So everything started happening in place. By the end of that 60-minute meeting, my husband had already booked tickets to Ukraine, and we were on our way a few weeks later, which was incredible, and many, many other provisions along the way. I want to give a heartfelt thanks of gratitude to Bethel for the opportunity to take a sabbatical. That is not taken lightly. So that was a gift. I also want to thank Shepherd's Foundation, which is a ministry here in the Arden Hills area. They've been serving in Ukraine for 31 years, and we knew nothing about that organization prior to July 13th. So we got connected with them to see if we could at least travel under that umbrella. And we've since continued to work very closely with them now, especially with the war taking place. And a very special shout of gratitude to Camp Maximum in Zolotonosha, Ukraine. Without Camp Maximum, we would not have been able to be gone that long. They housed us and they fed us and they took care of us during those 3 months. Also, I want to give a really special shout out to Vitaly Sobko. He is the CEO at Camp Maximum, and he is networker extraordinaire. Let me tell you, this man has no background in disabilities, and he managed to establish incredible connections the entire 3 months because of his ability to make phone calls and talk to people and get them to be on board. I have no idea what he said about me, but he got a lot accomplished. We are here with him at the Heartbeat of Ukraine. This was a special site that was dedicated in August last year because of the 30th anniversary of Ukrainian independence. And it's a really beautiful site because each of those wings, they call them angel wings, and each one represents a different oblast or region in Ukraine. In the middle of it, there's a drum beat that's going as the heartbeat of Ukraine, and it's surrounded by sunflower fields and cornfields. And you've maybe, as we've all been hearing more about Ukraine recently, you've learned that Ukraine has been the breadbasket of Europe, and that was seen even in this spot. So this is the geographical center of Ukraine. I wanted to put some numbers together for you. It was fun as we were summarizing our experiences in Ukraine to just look at all the different things that was happening, that were happening while we were there. So if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I was doing a lot of posts. It became my journal, my daily journal of what was happening. This one over here, we had amazing food, and at this school for the blind that we were hosted at, the chefs there made us 9 3-course meals over the course of 3 days. And this was fabulous Ukrainian food. It was a very special moment. Lots of traveling, some questionable buses that we were on, but we always got to where we needed to be. And we had 11 different translators and Google Translate. So we got along with that. But yeah, lots of fabulous opportunities. So this is where we were, and you've all now seen this map many times on the news. And this is currently where things are really bad. And up here, so Kyiv and the surrounding area has also been hit hard. And if you do have any specific questions about our connections now during the war, stay after, and I'd be happy to answer any of those. I know my husband would too, but the focus of this conversation will be what happened while we were there. But a lot of Zaporizhia, you would have seen that. That's where the nuclear power plant was taken over by Russia. And we were mostly right here. This is Zolotonosha. And then all the other places that I'll talk about here shortly. So thinking about disabilities in Ukraine, so my background as a special education professor and former special ed teacher, that's really where my heart is as it related to higher education. So as we headed to Ukraine, I needed to know a little bit more about what has been happening in order to know what I was stepping into and how I might be able to make a difference. So one of the big things I learned when I was doing my research is this term called defectology. And here in America, we used to have very negative language around disabilities, but that has since mostly dissipated. In Ukraine and in Russia, it's still very much a part of their language. And in fact, they don't have a current word for special education teacher. And so you could tell the people I was working with, they were hesitant to use this word because they know that that's not what they want to intend when they're speaking, but that is what's available. And so a special education teacher becomes a defectologist, a psychologist who works with people with disabilities is a defectologist. So how can we continue to help them move forward to have different language? their actions are far different than this for many people. Then the physical environments in the past, almost all apartment buildings have no access for wheelchairs. There are plenty of people with disabilities that live in apartment complexes, but it just means they're not coming and going unless somebody is carrying them. Ramps in the past were not available, and I'll talk about present here in a little bit. And then education for individuals with disabilities, there has been none, and that has been changing in the last 10 years. People with disabilities were institutionalized. Again, think pre-1975 in America. That's what I had to kind of wrap my head around. So the present, so sharing stories from our time there. So again, universities are working hard to remove this language of defectology, defectologist. They have quite a few programs for speech language pathologists and psychologists. So those are available, and those individuals are working at inclusion centers. And those inclusion centers are the places where they're trying to work with the schools to help them serve kids with disabilities. But it's not a smooth process yet. And education, the physical environment, so the ramps they exist. Some are very precarious, some are very, very steep, but they're trying. They don't have a law like the Americans with Disabilities Act helping our businesses and employers to put in great accessible entrances and other parts of the buildings. Also, the education for individuals with disabilities, slowly, educational institutions are building capacity. So the law just passed. Sorry, I couldn't remember if I had skipped a slide. The law just passed that individuals with disabilities should be able to get an education, but we don't have the teachers yet in order to educate them. So it's a process. Again, think back to 1975. Our law passed for kids to be able to be educated, but we didn't yet have the teachers to be teaching them. Kyiv and Western Ukraine are much further along than Central, Eastern, and Southern Ukraine. And so I was able to connect with people in Western Ukraine who have done amazing work and are probably the leading people in the country. I don't know if they're with me today, but they'll likely get to hear this at another time. Sergei Sidorov, Valia, I'm not remembering her last name, and Nadia, the three of them are working on a project called Equity Without Borders. And so they're doing a lot of work with the US Embassy, people at the University of Minnesota, and my colleague Clay Keller, who may also be joining us here. So inclusion is what Ukraine is moving towards. They've done work throughout the years, and in 2006, people with disabilities were recognized. In 2010, it continued to get some ground to move forward with the rights of persons with disability. And then in 2017 is when the educational law came about. So what was the present impact that we could do as we continued to go to all these different places? We thought about the impact. What can we do during these 3 months that we're there? Is there anything we can do? It's a big, big project. It's many, many years in the making. But what kind of influence can we have? So our first place was Camp Maximum. So as we think about Camp Maximum, it's a camp, if you're familiar with Trout Lake Camp, it's pretty similar to that. It was built off of some of those same ideas. It's an extreme camp. So kids with disabilities can come and they can do zip lines, and they can do a big swing that goes over this chasm in the hill, and they get to take part in what all other kids get to take part in. And this camp, even without disabilities, is an amazing camp in Ukraine. It's the only one of its kind. But we were there to help with families with kids with disabilities. And so our time was to meet with the parents every day. So we would spend, and I say we because my husband was there with me, we would talk with them for 90 minutes every day and answer their questions, listen to them, and just talk about what is their world like as they raise this child with a disability who probably is not in a school. So what is that like? And Luke had a lot of conversation. There weren't many dads there, but as he met with the dads and just listening to them talk about their fear of the future and what is my son or daughter going to do. And even though they aren't in school, they're still thinking about their future, that, okay, maybe by the time they're adults, there will be something in place for my son or daughter. Our camp buddy was Max right here. So during the times we weren't with parents, we were with him doing whatever camp activities were going on. And just some of the volunteers that you can see here, there were adults with disabilities in their 20s and then down to little bitty babies. And what I loved is that these volunteers have such a heart to serve these kids with disabilities. They don't have any training. They just want to be there. And we've learned from Vitaly that this camp is the one that he fills up first with his volunteers. So that's really great. And as I think about these volunteers, they're really the future of modeling acceptance for people with disabilities, because they're going out into the communities across Ukraine and they're getting their careers going, and they're acknowledging and making sure people with disabilities are a part of the community. So they give me so much hope. It really reminds me of our Bethel campus as we interact with and engage with students and build. That's what I saw at Camp Maximum. And then future partnerships. Can Camp Maximum be a training ground for people who want to work with kids with disabilities? Field experiences, internships, practicums, they don't exist yet for teachers, at least not in Eastern, Central, and Southern Ukraine. How can we help them get those experiences through Camp Maximum? Here are just some pictures of some of the experiences we had at the family camp. So even kids in wheelchairs were doing the zip line, and that was just, I mean, their joy was just contagious. It was awesome. And art activities and all kinds of joy and dancing and really fun moments. The government's impact on inclusion. We had the opportunity to connect with a couple different government entities while we were there. First, the Zolotonosha mayor and his deputy of disabilities hosted us for an afternoon, and we spent time sharing our vision, but also listening to him. And good, bad news, he is now out of Zolotonosha, but he's now in an upper level of government over a larger region of Ukraine. And so we're hopeful that that will mean more movement in more places. Portapole mayor in Portapole, that was a small village, and they are doing some of the most incredible inclusive work that we saw anywhere in Ukraine. A very small village, but they got a group of people together to just make a significant difference. Vitaly even connected us with the human rights representative of the High Council of Ukraine. So talking with her about disabilities in general, not specific to education. The First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, wife to President Zelensky, that was a really cool serendipitous moment. We had no idea she and President Zelensky were going to be in Zolotonosha. We happened to be in the town center buying groceries, bumped into one of the former volunteers at Camp Maximum, and in his broken English, he tried to explain to us that the president was coming to town, and we're like, oh, okay. And then as we used Google Translate and all of that, and we saw all of the, police and security and all that, we thought, okay, this is true. So we went to this inclusive playground. She was going to be there kind of for this, it wasn't a ribbon cutting, but basically allowing their, get a message across Ukraine that we're doing this great thing, getting this inclusive playground. So she came. I'm Google translating with the woman that I thought was going to be the person talking with her, and she never talked to her. I'm like, well, I'm not losing this opportunity. So I went chasing after her, and Mrs. President, do you speak English? And she was so gracious, and she gave about 7 minutes of her time, but it was incredible because she asked me, I wanted to ask her questions. Well, she in turn asked me questions and just wanted to know, why am I here? Why do I care? And she explained that, yes, there's a lot to do, but she doesn't feel like she can do anything. And so I thought, well, my goodness, yes, you can. Let's chat more. But we only had 7 minutes. But it was still really, her platform is to address issues with disabilities. And then Natalia Baiduk is who I would call a colleague now at the Cherkasy National University. She's the department chair there with the department of that would be preparing teachers, but she's also on the National Board of Education, so she has a very important voice in the country. So working with her as we move ahead will be very exciting. In fact, I'll be presenting at a conference she is hosting at the end of this month, virtually, of course. The school's impact on inclusion. So we visited many different schools and did a variety of different workshops, seminars, lectures. And this young girl is at the School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. And they did this amazing presentation for us, and it's a residential school, but incredible to be there with them. I included this picture of the stairs because the schools there, they look like old concrete Soviet buildings, but inside the schools, this is what they do. They make them bright and exciting and welcoming. Not yet for kids with disabilities, but they are exciting and welcoming. And then this is just one example of the teachers that I would meet with in order to give them some professional development in the area of autism. And I want to show an example of a Ukrainian school day. So my colleague Sergey and his wife put this together for us. And it's just a great representation of what life was like for us in a school. And those of you online, you can't hear it, but it's just music. The music isn't important. So we learned some Ukrainian sign language during this day. This is my colleague Sergey. He was my translator and professor. They have greenery everywhere in their schools. So welcoming. My seminars were typically 2 to 3 hours was normal, and then a couple days that it was 7 to 8 hour days of workshop. And I loved it. The people were talking. I told Sergey, I said, getting the audience to interact is really important for me. Can you help make this happen? And they all did it. I was so proud of them. This was the Inclusion Center, so this is where they would do evaluations for kids with disabilities, and then these are the people that give the advice and education on how to serve that student. All right. Moving from the schools to the universities, so how can our universities impact inclusion? And we had the opportunity to be at 3 different universities. Cherkasy National University was 30 minutes from Zolotonosha. Uman was right in the center of Ukraine, and then Ivano-Frankivsk is close to Lviv, which you've also been hearing on the news. You would have even heard about Ivano-Frankivsk on the news. So here I did lectures and interactive discussions with the students and the faculty. And for any of you who teach in higher ed, this was my all-time favorite place to teach in my life. Sergey shared with us that because of COVID, we couldn't be in a lecture hall where everyone would be present, but it was a nice day. Would we be willing to hike to the highest part of the city, that there was this cool place to hang out for the day? He'd give his students PE credits. So that was amazing, and we were there for long enough that we all got sunburned. It was a really lovely fall day, and the students were so great, and we really interacted with them, and it was really informal. I didn't have a presentation. It was just conversation, and after that day, they even gave Luca an honorary autism certificate. He was teaching how to do social stories using their phones. So that was amazing, and the view, you can't see the mountains in the background, but it's the Carpathian Mountains and the city of Ivano-Frankivsk in the background, but just amazing experience. And they're so eager. So this group of students, I would almost compare it to like a community college experience where they're learning how to become paraprofessionals, and get into the schools prior to getting a 4-year degree. I'm going to skip that one. Okay, so then families and children. So how are they impacted by inclusion? The example that I want to share with you is one that is, it can be really sad, but it gives me hope for how things can change for the future. So I have permission to share this story about Donik, and this is Donik at Camp Maximum, and his brother was one of the volunteers, so his brother helped him. He has pretty severe response to external sensory stimuli, and being on a bike helps him. And then this is his dad, Andre, and holding him tightly would also help Donik stay a little bit more regulated. Following camp, Andre asked if he could sit down and talk with me about things that they could maybe try for Donik. He was at home 24 hours a day, very small apartments that they live in. And so, of course, I was willing to talk. And as I continued to learn more about him, I realized he's probably on the autism spectrum with some pretty significant sensory needs. Nonverbal and quite aggressive when he wasn't on his bike or being held tightly, either in a hug or on his dad's back. So I reached out to friends back home and I said, if you're willing, please go onto this Amazon wish list and buy all these things. And Paul and Linda Wicklund, some of you may know them. They were the original founders of Shepherd's Foundation. They were coming to Zolotonosha and were willing to bring 2 50-pound suitcases just for this. So we did, we filled it with the support of many. And I want to show you how these sensory supports help Donik. These were also shared with many schools and territorial centers where kids with disabilities were being educated. So first day, so I met with Dad. We couldn't get it scheduled until the Sunday before we left. Met with Dad to bring him all these tools and to teach him, but we didn't have a translator, so we used Google Translate. And gave him all these different things and taught him how Donik was not there. And so he went home and he had Donik try all of these things at the same time. And it was amazing. So here he has his weighted blanket, he has a sensory thing, he has a thing to put in his mouth, he has noise reducing headphones, and a bumpy seat. Now this is usually to be sat on, but I thought, how awesome, he needed it for his feet. So he's just kind of trying everything out here. It's his little sister. That is not supposed to go in the mouth, but Dad quickly gets him to take it away from his mouth. So he's just trying everything out. Oh, and a vest, a compression vest. It's a little bit big for him, but as I watched him really get more regulated when he would have a hug or be on his dad's back, we believe that will help him and really make a difference for him. Then, a day or two later, this was the other video they sent. Now, when I first saw this video, I thought it was great. When Vitaly watched it, he said, Katie, he's never eaten on his own before. So then those of you who know me, I started to cry because I was so happy. So here he is eating his awesome Ukrainian soup. He has his visual timer, and he has the if-then statement, if I eat my soup for 5 minutes, then I can go play outside. He has the noise-reducing headphones on, and he's eating independently. And that was just incredible that those few tools could make a difference. So now, will he be able to start to read and do math because he's able to be more regulated? That is our hope. And I hope the next time we're there, we're going to hear he's in school. That would be amazing. Then looking at the community's impact on inclusion and the people we connected with, one of the main places was the Territorial Center. And that Territorial Center was a place we went a few different times. They were only 1 mile from Camp Maximum. And I would do different trainings there, but we also provided some tools and then a lot of conversation. And Luke noticed that when we were down in Zaporizhia, that the older students with autism were working at the school. They were either helping with dishes or laundry, and they loved it. And they had such joy in it. And he started thinking, Vitaly is driving the laundry from the camp to Cherkasy after every camp of 150 people and bringing it back to the camp, that what if we have this place that's a mile away, employ people with disabilities, and do the laundry for Camp Maximum? So that is now in the works because Vitaly, networker extraordinaire, picked up the phone and said, can we do this? And that process has started. They also have a bakery there, and although Camp Maximum cooks and bakes amazing food, there's always a need for others to help. And so if we could employ more people with disabilities through the work of partnership of Camp Maximum and this territorial center, that would be amazing. This TV interview, the only reason I talk about it, yes, it was a fun experience, but it reaches a pretty large region. And Vitaly's hope is that they will be a conduit for ongoing success stories. So he was translating everything that I was answering that day, but really to bring awareness and visibility of people with disabilities to the community. That's what we need to happen in order for all these other things to gain momentum. The other impact on inclusion is the work that can be done in this territorial center. So Dima, 5 years ago, Dima was highly aggressive and nonverbal. He is on the autism spectrum. The territorial center was donated a pretty amazing art studio where students and individuals with disabilities could come and do art. And that was what Dima found he was really good at, and nobody knew. And he has now, if you walk past my office door, you'll see a lot of his work. But he designs many different things on ceramics. When we met the mayor prior to coming to this location, the mayor went to his display cabinet and brought us this beautiful clock and shared that it was made by individuals with disabilities at the territorial center. And that was amazing that he gave it. It's my most precious gift. And then the next day we met Dima at the center, and we showed him the picture, and he's like, I made that clock. Oh my goodness, it made it even more special because Dima was at Camp Maximum when we first met him, and to know how well he's doing, and he now helps with the tours at the territorial center. And it makes me so happy that he is happy and doing something he is really good at. So thinking of the future as it relates to disabilities and sharing hope. So as we go back to these 3 items I mentioned earlier, the labels, moving away from negative language, what is that new word? Will it be called an inclusive teacher? What will that term be? Physical environments, improving access, and as much as this war is absolutely devastating, we strongly believe they will rebuild and they will be stronger than ever, and those buildings will now be built to fit people with disabilities rather than retrofitting, but actually intending to build that way. And then education for individuals with disabilities. That the practice, so as I think about all the needs, I needed to really hone in on one thing that I can try to help move forward, at least for now. And that is including practice in the teacher preparation programs. So whether it's opportunities at Camp Maximum or with NGOs, where can these future teachers be practicing that skill of helping kids with disabilities? Building capacity so that special ed teachers are available to serve all children with disabilities in Ukraine. And then developing programs, housing, and jobs for adults with disabilities. My colleague Clay Keller shared a presentation with me that he had done in 2019 when he was in Ukraine. And as we look at these recommendations, I get so excited about them because it's not only what I was able to do in those 3 short months, but it also gives a ramp into the future. And so making sure that every school has a seat for every child with a disability, making disabilities visible and acceptable, sharing ownership for providing education, contextualizing the ideas that we're borrowing, having a comprehensive system for preparing the personnel we need, using the national standards, curriculum, and assessments, providing special education, and actively collaborating. And it is such a joy to be able to collaborate with these individuals at the different institutions of higher ed. So we have hope for the impact we may have on inclusion with the government, with the schools, with the universities, and within the communities as we look at improving lives of individuals with disabilities. So we want them to have access to education, access to teachers who know how to teach individuals with disabilities, and access to employment. And I want to share this as one of the last pieces. Andre, Donique's dad, reminded me to have mighty expectations. Sorry. As I said goodbye to him, I said, I pray that God uses these sensory tools in some small way to help his son. And he immediately replied through Google Translate and said, I don't. I pray God uses these in big ways. And I thought, yes, of course, we must have big expectations that God would want us to have no less. And in Ukrainian, we say, Dyakuyu, thank you. And what questions might you have for me today? And then I'll close with a prayer for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine after I take questions, and if there are any online.
Are you looking to go back at some point? You will need to do more work, and if so, what type of things are you hoping to be able to do?
So the question was, are we looking to go back to continue this work? We do. Our goal when we left was to go back for the next 20 years. And so we don't know what that will look like now. Next week, I'm meeting with some people here at Bethel, a large group of people, to talk about the future of Ukraine. And that will be my hope, is that we will continue to go back. Between now and then, I'm going to do virtual work with the universities. So this inclusion online conference, I mean, the fact that it's still running at the end of May tells you the resilience of these individuals. And yes, this university is in the center of Ukraine, so they've been safe up to this point. So I'll continue to do that as well. Peg.
That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
She took your answer.
Rhonda?
I'm wondering about these children who are at home and are not in school. Are they educated in any way?
So the question was, are the children that are at home 24 hours a day, are they educated in any way? They're only educated if one of the parents or someone in the family knows how to educate them. So the one family I visited, they heard about me with a connection at a church, and they asked if I'd come to their home. And when I got there and I met their son, I had to share that I had no background or expertise in the area of the particular disability. I had never even heard of the disability. And as I observed him, I knew that I did not have expertise, and I felt terrible because I wanted to give something, and she said, oh no, we just want you to listen because we think you're going to tell people our story, and we want somebody to hear our story. And the next day was when I met the First Lady. And that's when I told her these kids should not be at home 24 hours a day. And so she was an amazing mom. All these parents are amazing, but she figured out she had to do intensive physical therapy with him every day. And they didn't even have a 1-bedroom apartment. They had a living room and a kitchen and a bathroom. And even in their little hallway, she had put in things that she could do physical therapy with her son every day. And that was amazing to me that she, and of course, if you're a parent of that child, you're going to be dedicated to serving. But man, they're exhausted. So that's really hard. Becky?
Is there a service that the parents get a break?
No. Is there any service that helps the parents get a break? There isn't. And I think about, even here in America, our parents of kids with disabilities need breaks and don't get enough. But we have some things in place that we can support them. And I asked them, I said, are there babysitters that you can train, like could we train babysitters in the church? Could we bring youth in and train them to give you a 2-hour break? And they really liked that idea, and so that was another thing we put on the list of, can we try to help with that? But that's tough. Peg?
In Ukraine, is there any like public television or that's geared toward children, you know, like a Sesame Street kind of thing, or Electric Company, where children at home get any kind of vicarious exposure to literacy or social skills?
A summary of the question was whether or not Ukraine has public television or something similar that would provide some sort of interactive education or television education for children. I do not know that answer. Did we ever even see a TV when we were there?
I don't think so, but I was thinking they would use their telephones.
Their telephones. So they would have access to the internet. And so they may have television like that, but I know the family, Donik's family, for example, they don't have a computer, they don't have a TV, they have a phone that they have access to the internet. And then we were talking about basic educational tools like flashcards and things like that. That could we get things like that to the families?
I have a question about diagnoses. So if the children are going to school, is it through the medical profession that a family would get a diagnosis, and how did that work?
Yeah, thank you, Linda. So the question is diagnosing or identifying kids with disabilities in Ukraine, and what does that look like? They definitely have the medical model, but they are moving to these inclusion centers where those individuals are identifying kids with disabilities and then how to serve them in the schools. So that's really where the inclusion centers are really similar to what we are doing in our schools, but there's not as direct of a line to the school as we have here. And so kids are being, I recognize some of the assessments that were on their shelves that have been translated into Ukrainian. So they are doing those. It's just very few and far between right now. And then, of course, there aren't teachers yet to serve them once they know what the disability is. So I would have to say I was really happy to see that they were so eager to learn about autism, because although many things are maybe back in the early 70s of what we had here in America, they can learn from all of the growth we've had, and they don't have to take 40 years to be where we're at today, but they can jump, move forward. So I was thrilled that they really wanted to understand autism, and that was really their preferred topic across the country. Yes.
If the parents, or if there's not really support, how do the parents survive and financially? Think if they, here it's like 2-parent families are the norm.
Yeah, so how do parents survive as far as a financial picture? So the average income in Ukraine is $300 to $500 a month, whether you're a professor or a staff member in a school or working as a cashier at a grocery store. So that income level is very low. Cost of living is much lower, but clothes and cars are the same cost as they are here in America, with a salary that's significantly less than what we have. So it is very difficult. And they'll do, one of the families that I know, the mom would have people come to her home and she would cut hair because she could do that while she was taking care of her son. Another family, it's a one income, definitely one income families are very normal. I didn't get to talk much about their faith, but as I'm thinking about one income families and just that family unit, the Christian faith in these individuals is so incredibly strong. And even as we interact with them during this war, they put me to shame for how strong they are in their faith. And even in those families, they still give all the glory to God, even though they're exhausted. Yep, on a lighter note.
A student from the Pre-Carpathian National University asked what was the thing you liked most about your experience.
That's awesome. So a question from a student at Pre-Carpathian University. So glad you're with us. Wish I could see you. What was the best part of being in Ukraine? So many pluses, so many pluses. First of all, the people. The people were incredible. As I just shared how they are so strong in their faith. They were so loving no matter where we went and no matter what age. So whether they were 16 or 80, they were so welcoming and loving to us and would give us anything and everything they had. In particular, the students at Pre-Carpathian University, they made us little penguins that had a heart on them, and we have them in our living room. I'll just shout a hello to all of you. We were with them for 3 days, and they just wanted to acknowledge us in these beautiful ways of, escorting us around the city or giving us these small gifts. It was incredible. So the people were the best part. The food is a quick second.
Katie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you share an acknowledgement of how the churches are instrumental in trying to bring disabilities to the forefront, and that we recognize that they need to be tremendously involved because of the faith component that these people have?
So the comment was about how the churches are really getting on board to serve in the area of disabilities. And that there are several strong Baptist churches in Zolotonosha, and one in particular really wants to minister to families who have kids with disabilities who are not getting out. And the pastor, even one of the first things he told me was, I want to go and find all those people who live on the 5th floor of the apartment buildings in this city. I want them to know that they are seen and heard and cared for. And this particular church, we attempted to do a training for their youth volunteers so that youth with disabilities could come and hang out on Friday nights or whatever night it happened to be. And I got really sick, so I was not able to do that seminar with them. But they have the heart and desire to serve in that way. And that's what's needed. Just as I talked about the volunteers being that face of the future of acceptance and belonging, the churches can play a big role in that. So the next time we go, I'm going to say that confidently, the next time we go, we want to help those churches get that volunteer group set up so that they can be serving in those important ways.
So one more question from online. Sergey Ziordi. Katie, in the audience, what advice can you give to Ukrainian educators, parents, and children with disabilities in these difficult times for our country?
So my colleague Sergey asked this question, what advice from the audience can we give to them as they think about their future and serving individuals with disabilities? Did I mostly get it? Thank you, Sergey, for that question. Sergey, I would love to bring students. I would love to bring college students, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. But what other ideas do you have?
There are a lot of people looking to give and donate because of all the attention Ukraine is getting. So maybe having a project that people can put those dollars toward. It's not an ideal solution, but it might be a way to garner attention and make things happen.
And that's a really good point. So Abby shared that right now many people are wanting to give since we can't serve over there. And we see the many difficult things on the news. People really want to do something. And so can we use this time to really focus on that attention and get extra funding to help in a variety of ways? A couple of weeks ago, the Disability Awareness Group at Bethel did a fundraiser for a smaller organization in Western Ukraine that works specifically for kids with disabilities. Shepherd's Foundation has been getting tons of money in for humanitarian aid and refugee work. And Sergey, I would say if you and your students can think of specific things that we might be able to raise money for, to let me know, and I'll continue to try and figure out ways to help. And thank you for joining me when it's nighttime for you. That's a big commitment for college students, so thank you. This group of students, they have made amazing videos, and I've shared a few of them on my Facebook page, but they're practicing English. So Sergey is one of their English professors, and his wife is one of their special ed professors, and they're practicing their English in amazing ways and making these awesome videos about Ukrainian traditions and to bring that joy, that Ukrainian spirit for others to see. So it's, if I had the day to share with you, I would share all those videos. All right, well, I think that is the end of my time. So thank you so much. I do want to close with a short prayer for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine. Father God, thank you for the amazing opportunity to get to know the incredible people of Ukraine. Lord, we ask that you would be fully present with them in these days that are so difficult, that you would continue to help them see the joy that they still have in their country, the joy and spirit that they have amongst one another. And they're so willing to share it, Lord, with the world. And we want that to continue to forever. So be present with them. And Lord, we'd ask that this war stop even today. And we ask that you make it clear for all of the people in Ukraine what they can and should be doing right now. And may we not forget about them. May we keep them on our lips every day when we spend time in prayer. Pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen. Дякую.